Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are. The United Nations celebrates the World Press Freedom Day on May the 4th, and Catholics often connect this date with another one, August the 14th. August the 14th remembers the anniversary of the death of the Polish Franciscan Catholic priest Maximilian Kolbe, which was killed by the Nazis in the Auschwitz concentration camp on August 14, 1941. What this memory has to do with freedom of the press is sometimes forgotten because the life of Father Kolbe is obfuscated by the dramatic circumstances of his death, which have been told in several novels and movies. At the end of July 1941, a prisoner managed to escape from Auschwitz, which was not easy, but he succeeded. And in retaliation, the Nazis ordered 10 inmates selected by chance to be closed in an underground bunker and starved to death there. One of the unfortunate inmates selected to die in this horrible way was a Polish military man called Franciszek Gajowniczek. And he started crying for his wife and children. And when Father Kolbe stood up and proposed to the Nazis, who accepted, to go to the bunker and die instead of Gajowniczek. Eventually, Kolbe was taken to the bunker, where he led the other victims to sing, pray, and wait for death calmly. And when the Nazis came, after 2 weeks, Father Kolbe was still alive, so they decided to kill him with a lethal injection. As for the prisoner he had replaced, Gajowniczek, he survived Auschwitz, led a long and happy life, and died in 1995 at age 93. Now, the story of the death of Father Kolbe is so extraordinary that many do not even ask the question why exactly Father Kolbe was in Auschwitz in the first place. There were tens of thousands of priests and members of Catholic religious orders in Poland. The Nazis didn't exactly like them, but in their majority, they were not arrested. Kolbe was because he was an immensely popular journalist who edited a daily newspaper, a magazine, and operated a radio station. Hundreds of thousands of Poles followed his journalistic productions every day, and his magazine was even simultaneously published in Japanese in Nagasaki. While Kolbe tried to be careful, his readers clearly understood he was critical of the Nazi regime and its crimes. His criticism became increasingly open until he was arrested in February 1941 and taken to Auschwitz in the following month of May. So Kolbe was arrested and died because he defended the freedom of the press even under the most difficult circumstances. Other journalists who accepted to twist the truth to suit the Nazis survived. They saved their lives, but they lost their dignity and their honor. Clearly, the story of the Teichmann case does not involve torture and assassination, but it is, however, also a story where many journalists unfortunately accepted to publish the calumnies and slander fabricated by the prosecutor who had started the case, creating immense pain and suffering among the Taijimen dizzy and prostituting the freedom of the press and the dignity of journalism. Basically, they accepted to ignore the truth and propagate lies. Before we hear in this webinar more about the media, freedom of religion or belief, and Taijimen case, I suggest we meditate on the constitutive relationship between freedom of the press and truth by reading some sentences from the last article Father Kolbe was able to publish in his magazine in December 1940. That's the last issue he published before he was arrested. The title of the article was "Nobody in the World Can Change the Truth." No one can change the truth, Kolbe wrote. The truth is unique. We know this well, yet in our daily life, we sometimes behave as if to the same question, the answers no and yes will both be the truth. It is true, for example, wrote Kolbe, that right now I'm writing these words and that you, dear reader, are reading them. On the face of it, the opposite statement, namely that I have never written these things or that you are not reading them now, cannot be true. In fact, on this subject, yes and no cannot both be true. If someone wanted to disprove it and asserted that neither I wrote this text nor you are reading it, the truth will not change. And the one who will deny it will be mistaken or deceived. And even if such deniers were numerous, the strength of truth will not suffer at all. Indeed, even if all the human beings on earth affirmed, published, and swore that I did not write these lines and that you are not reading them, all this will not be enough to break even a crumb of the truth, namely that I wrote this text and that you are reading it. Note that not even God can change or erase the truth by miracle, because he is precisely the truth by essence. How great is the power of truth, a truly infinite and divine power. So ultimately, the persecutors could kill Kolbe, but they could not change the truth. And this is also true for the Taijimen case. The persecutor could detain the Shifu and others and harass the Ditsu, but they cannot change their falsehood into truth. A free press is a press capable of recognizing that its real freedom comes from its commitment to the truth. We need the media brave enough to tell the truth, even when this truth is unpopular or disturb the powers that be, as it often happens when religious or spiritual minorities are persecuted. And this, of course, includes the subject matter of our webinar, the truth about the Taijimen case. Now, before giving the floor to the first speakers, it is my pleasure, as I also just returned from Leuven in Belgium, as did Willy Fautré here, where we had sessions on various subjects of freedom of religion or belief, to introduce a video about the participation to the FoRB, Institute for Freedom of Religion or Belief, conference at the Evangelical University of Leuven, the participation of Taijimen Dixit, one of whom is an amateur and perhaps more than an amateur opera singer, and entertain the participants by singing a Taiwanese opera air.
Dear scholars and experts, distinguished guests, dear friends, good evening. First of all, I would like to thank ETF for hosting this conference. We're from Taijimen Qigong Academy, and it's an honor to be here today for such a meaningful event. Taijimen is an ancient Menpai similar to school of Qigong, martial arts, and self-cultivation. Dr. Hong Daozi, 掌门人 of Taijimen, Grandmaster, teaches 弟子, disciples, to spread positive energy and the message of love and peace through self-cultivation. However, despite our huge contribution to the society and the world, we, as a minority spiritual movement, has been subject to judicial and tax oppression by the Taiwan government. Here, we are going to present our unjust case through singing the story of 27-year persecution of religion and belief. Our presentation of the traditional cultural treasure of Taiwan, Taiwanese opera. While Taijimen has long been persecuted by the Taiwanese government, Dr. Hong Daozi still guides Dizi to practice in daily life through his examples and words. We keep going on doing the right thing. Dr. Hong has led us to visit over 100 countries on 5 continents to spread the messages of conscience, love, and peace to pray for the world. For many years, the doctrine of conduct mirrored the words of Taijimen has gained widely recognitions by heads of states and leaders of all likes. The Federation of World Peace and Love, established by Dr. Hong Daozi in 2000, was honored with U.S. President's Lifetime Achievement Award for their contributions to promote social well-being. We hope that by drawing the world together for good through a culture of peace with love and conscience, the world will have the chance for critical improvement and sustainable development.
for those who normally come to our webinars, the lady singing was Robin Liang, the former firefighter. She has participated in some of our webinars, telling her experiences as a firefighter and a DZ. Now we will hear from the first of our two speakers of the first session, Peter Zörer from Austria. He is a journalist, very active in gathering together journalists throughout the world for human rights. He is a blogger and is executive director of FoRB, Forum for Religious Freedom Europe. And Peter was also one of the participants in the delegation who visited the political and cultural authorities in Taiwan and attended conferences in universities last month. So, Peter, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Massimo, and thank you, Taiji Men, for asking me to participate in this precious webinar. This topic is really at the bottom of my heart, actually. I've been, for many years, I've been trying to get media onto the religious freedom issue. And my presentation is a kind of summary of, the biggest problem I can see in this issue. I don't have many solutions, but I think to understand the problem is already part of the solution. Do you agree? So the topic is freedom of press and religious liberty, the two sides of the same coin. How Article 19 and Article 18 from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights are interrelated, and why journalists and faith communities need each other. Article 18 and Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights represent two elements of human rights, which are freedom of thought, conscience, religion, and freedom of expression. These articles are interrelated and should be treated as two sides of the same coin. Both freedoms are fundamental to the proper functioning of society based on democratic principles. And neither can exist in isolation from the other. In this paper, I will argue that press freedom and religious freedom need each other, and that they are crucial in upholding the individual human rights in society. Press freedom plays a significant role in democratic societies in promoting transparency, accountability, and the rule of law. It is fundamental. It is a fundamental human right that is enshrined in Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This article recognizes that everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression, which includes freedom of the press. Freedom of the press plays a critical role in exposing corruption, holding governments accountable for their actions, and uncovering human rights abuses. Without press freedom, it would be impossible to have an informed public and a functioning democracy. We have plenty of examples in the world about this. On the other hand, religious freedom is also essential in a democracy, as enshrined in Article 18 of the Universal Human Rights Declaration. The freedom of religion is the right of every individual to believe or practice their religion of choice, or to hold no religion at all, without fear of discrimination or persecution. Religious freedom is a crucial element for a diverse and pluralistic society. It ensures that each individual beliefs are protected and respected, leading to a tolerant and respectful society. So the question arises, how do press freedom and religious freedom relate to each other? let me summarize this complex question. In a democratic society, press freedom and religious freedom are interrelated because they work together to safeguard most fundamental individual human rights. Religious freedom creates the conditions for various beliefs to flourish, generating diverse opinions and ideas that need protection by using tools such as the press freedom. Press freedom, on the other hand, performs a vital role in ensuring that the diverse opinions and ideas and beliefs are widely disseminated and safeguarded from suppression, censorship, or discrimination. Moreover, press freedom and religious freedom complement each other by upholding the principles of free and open debate. A pluralistic society is one where people hold different values and beliefs, which can sometimes lead to heated debates and discussions. It is essential to foster an environment where free and open discussion can take place on issues related to religious tolerance, diversity, and a free flow of information. By promoting free and open debate, press freedom and religious freedom reinforce each other and strengthen democratic institutions. Although no one can seriously deny this interconnectedness between press freedom and religious liberty, why then do so many journalists collaborate with state actors in suppressing religious minorities and in spreading false narratives about them? Big question, right? And why are so many religious people afraid of journalists or even despise them? I can tell you, I met so many people from religious minorities who think journalists are Satan. But let me tell you, I found out that many of the religious minority groups have been traumatized by the way they were treated by the media. But there is one positive element. Now there are a new generation of journalists, and they don't use the old dossiers so much anymore. They use direct sources much more. So the freedom of the press. What is the global situation? Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights states that everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media, regardless of frontiers. Article 19 also implicates for media freedom. It means has implications for press freedom. It means that media outlets should operate without interference from the government and should be free to report on all issues of public interest. The media must be allowed to present information that is critical of those in power without fear of persecution or retaliation. You know this expression, media's mission is speaking truth to power. At least it was the motto of serious journalism. For 12 years, I have been an active member of the Press Freedom Watchdog, Reporters Without Borders. The organization publishes in their annual reports World Press Freedom Index, which evaluates the environment of journalism in 180 countries and territories. The report is always published on the World Press Freedom Day, which is the 3rd of May each year. So here is a brief overview of the most recent analysis of the global situation with regards to the freedom of the media. The situation is very serious in 31 countries, difficult in 42 countries, problematic in 55 countries, and good or satisfactory in 52 countries. That is of 180 countries. In 52 countries, it is more or less satisfactory. In other words, guess who is number one in religious freedom performance of 180 countries. Guess who? It's Norway. And the first three are Scandinavian countries. And of course, there are many European countries. Guess who is last? Yes, you guessed it, North Korea. And China and Russia are pretty much down on the scale. In other words, the environment for journalism is bad in 7 out of 10 countries. And satisfactory is only in only 3 out of 10. Generally, this year's report looks even more pessimistic than the years before. Listen to that. It says this instability is a result of increased aggressiveness on the part of the authorities in many countries and growing animosity towards journalists and social media in the physical world. The volatility is also the consequence of growth in the fake content industry. Did you ever hear about this fake content industry? Yes, there's fake content industry. And major countries produce fake content industries, which produces and distributes disinformation and provides the tools for manufacturing it. So now freedom of religion or belief around the world. Article 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights ensures that everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, including the right to choose and express their beliefs without fear of discrimination and persecution. Religious freedom is commonly considered as the most basic of human rights, safeguarded in the United Nations by the United Nations Charter and other significant human rights frameworks, such as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights at the IRF Summit in Washington, which some of you attended. I saw some of you. Mark, I see you right there. And also some Taiji men representatives were there. It was frequently referred to as the first freedom, upon which all other freedoms depend for their very existence. Despite its paramount importance, this first freedom is often better recognized in its absence than in its observance. Dr. Jan Fiegel, who was also there at the IRF Summit, Dr. Jan Fiegel, who served as the EU Special Envoy on freedom of religion or belief, approximates that almost 80% of the planet's populace live in countries with significant limitations on what they can believe and how they may practice their faith. Almost 80% of the world population. Just let that sink in. At the IRF Summit, attendees were moved by Dr. Hong and the Taiji Men community's compelling presentations and testimonies about the enduring persecution by Taiwanese authorities for more than 2 decades. The local media has without a doubt failed to accurately report on the movement, and journalists have fallen short in one of their chief responsibilities, which means speaking truth to power. That is sadly the case in Taiwan, also like in many other countries. At the summit, Religious Freedom Summit, Beth Van Schaak, a US Department of State ambassador at large for global criminal justice, gave a realistic view on current religious freedom, violations around the globe. In Afghanistan, the Taliban continues to persecute members of religious minority groups and mandate inhuman punishments for residents in areas under its control, including public stonings. The problem is actually, although in Afghanistan also the press freedom is very low, but the problem is that the journalists hardly report about the religious freedom violations. That's a general problem, and we have to challenge this. This is something we are trying to find out what is the reason of this? In Burma, Myanmar, we have witnessed more than 1.2 million flee horrific violence in the country. The vast majority being members of religious and ethnic minority communities, including Rohingya, who are predominantly Muslim and who face decades of systematic discrimination, statelessness, and targeted violence. In the Central African Republic, who reports about Africa? Who? In the Central African Republic, citizens have faced cycles of violence over the past 10 years. Christian and Muslims affiliated militants have attacked communities and houses of worship, including in 2014 at one peak of violence, resulting in the destruction of almost all the country's mosques and displacement of an estimated 80% of the Muslim population. Imagine 80% of the Muslim population. More than 1/4 of the country's population remain displaced. The Kremlin-backed paramilitary organization Wagner Group, who is very famous now, also stands accused of specifically targeting Muslims and Fulani communities in horrific attacks. I should have said infamous, not famous. And in China, members of the religious communities have long experienced repression. And we have seen a dramatic increase in abuses under the Chinese Communist Party General Secretary Xi Jinping, under his rule. Since 2017, crimes against humanity and genocide have been committed against Uyghurs, who are predominantly Muslim. Across China more broadly, religious persecution also is directed at Tibetan Buddhists, Falun Gong practitioners, Christians, and so many others seeking only to peacefully practice their beliefs. Now, let me conclude. It is noteworthy that nations with functional democracies and high levels of press freedom also demonstrate considerable religious diversity and liberty. Conversely, countries that have authoritarian systems can't rule of law, and low diversity are at the bottom of the press freedom index and often violate fundamental human rights, particularly religious freedom. Essentially, freedom of the press and religious freedom, again, let me reiterate, essentially freedom of the press and religious freedom are two sides of the same coin. Both media professionals and the religious individuals face an uphill battle against formidable Goliath. You know the biblical story, David and Goliath, of totalitarian and corrupt governments, and could collaborate in various areas to support one another. But progress in this direction has been slow. I think, Massimo, you will agree with that, and others. Nevertheless, some media outlets associated with human rights and religious freedom advocacy organizations managed to bridge the gap, thanks God, such as the Epoch Times, Human Rights Without Frontiers, and Peter Winter, of course. Although mainstream media has historically done little objective reporting, some US and European sources like the Washington Times, the European Times, as well as the Asian outlets like Asia Times, have done commendable work in covering current human rights issues. The Taipei Times is one recent example of a publication that has done excellent reporting on religious persecution, including the Taijiban case. So, unfortunately, much of the corporate media seems to engage in a sensationalistic reporting about so-called cults, relying on skewed reporting and fabricated rumors and false narratives. Tabloid television networks, in particular, appear to follow the maxim, if it bleeds, it leads. It is high time to challenge the media to listen to the accounts of religious persecution victims and to encourage journalists to see the bigger picture, that we are not adversaries, but allies in the same boat. And why not become friends? Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Peter. And now for, as they say, something completely different, we will hear about disasters and media from Stefania Cerruti, who is an expert in disasters and external relations manager of MEDIS, the Major Emergencies and Disasters International School. She also had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Hong Dao-tse at a ceremony in Turin some years ago, but I believe she will speak more about the strange relation between disasters and media. So, Stefania, the floor is yours.
When disasters hit, free media can save lives. Fake media and news can cause more casualties. The same is true for disasters caused by religious persecution. Did you ever see a shark swimming on a highway or a city avenue flooded with water? Perhaps you did. On social media and some tabloid newspapers, pictures of these sharks appeared after Hurricane Harvey hit Texas and Louisiana in 2017. The same pictures went viral on social media when Hurricane Irma from the Caribbean extended to Florida, also in 2017, and Hurricane Florence flooded several highways in the Carolinas in 2018. They were not similar photos, they were the same, and they were all false pictures created with Photoshop. My field of study and activity is disasters, both natural and human-made. How these disasters are reported is crucial and can either save lives or add to the casualties. When we are confronted with disasters, it is important that we affirm the freedom of the press. Our studies show that often disasters cause more victims in countries ruled by totalitarian regimes with no free media than where democracy prevails. This happens because totalitarian regimes' first concern is to preserve their image. They do not want the media to show the suffering caused by disasters, which can convey an impression of weakness or expose the ineffectiveness of their relief machine. However, since disaster relief in our globalized society can only be international, very few countries, if any, have all the skills, the technologies, and the resources to confront a major disaster alone, preventing the media from reporting the truth and minimizing what happened seriously and negatively impact the relief operations. This is even worse with disasters such as epidemics, which travel from one country to others. Even without entering into the debate on the origins of COVID-19, certainly the absence of a free press in China delayed the international spread of reliable information about the virus that might have alerted other countries and saved innumerable lives. On the other hand, together with a free press comes a fake press and fake news. The story of the sharks swimming on the highways and avenues was false. but originally it was comparatively inoffensive. However, the shark story surfaced once again last year, in September 2022, when Hurricane Ian became the worst hurricane affecting Florida since 1935. This time, the shark fake news was told with a vicious twist, criticizing the US authorities and the rescue agency as so ineffective and corrupt that they would even let the sharks swim free in cities and possibly kill citizens. What was the difference with the previous shark fake stories? The simple answer is the war in Ukraine. The criticism of the United States about the alleged sharks swimming on flooded Florida streets and highways after Hurricane Ian was first heard of Russian social media trolls. It even found its way to reputable media, but the videos and pictures were false. The real sharks were the Russian propaganda agents fabricating fake news and manipulating a real disaster. Similar sharks also swim when a different kind of disasters happen, those caused by injustice and persecution against religious and other minorities. These are human-made disasters, but can be as dangerous as natural disasters. The more so because their catastrophic consequences can be measured in full only years after they happen, and some may be never known. One such disaster was the raid against Taiji men in Taiwan in 1996, with all its consequences. It is not exaggerated to call it a human-made disaster, since courts of law in Taiwan, up to the Supreme Court, clarified that it was based on false accusation and fabricated evidence. Clearly, the aim of those who instigated it was to create a disaster, a hurricane sweeping away Taiji men, and a dirty water where the sharks of corruption and persecution could swim. As in all disasters, particularly human-made, the assessment of all damages will require years. Apart from material and economic damages, slandered reputation, tears, and suffering are difficult to count. There may be damages caused to Taiji men dizzy we will never know about. The role of the media in the Taiji men disaster was also decisive. Very few media reported honestly on the case, and only recently the activities of international scholars and human rights advocates led to some good reporting, although mostly on specialized media such as Bitter Winter or the European Times. We can only speculate whether reporting in Taiwan by a real independent press not afraid of criticizing the prosecutor and the government could have stopped or lead to the solution of the Taiji men case right after it started. What we know for sure is that fake news and irresponsible media, which accepted uncritically everything the prosecutor who started the case fed them, had a heavy responsibility in creating a climate of slander and discrimination against Taiji men that became an important component of the disaster. It is very difficult, after a disaster hits, to control fake news. The modern system of social media makes it virtually impossible, notwithstanding all claims by Twitter or Facebook that they have filters eliminating some fake news. Some studies claim that after disasters, fake news gather 6 times more readers than genuine ones. Again, this is also true for disasters created by religious persecution. Fake news accusing religious or spiritual movements of strange behavior. Taiji Man was even ridiculously accused of raising goblins, make for better copy and gather more readers than real news. It looks like a lost cause, but the only way to contrast fake news is to have a free and responsible press committed to publish real and fact-checked stories. This is true for disaster news, as it is for news about the disasters of religious discrimination. We see more and more true, real news about Taiji Man and its case. We can only contribute to this fight by reading and supporting them. For example, by using and advertising the website taijimancase.org and the Bitter Winter magazine, which are playing a key role in publishing real news about the Taiji Man case.
So thank you, Stefania. And of course, we should add to the good source. We invite our audience to consult also Human Rights Without Frontiers. We just today had an important conference about Pakistan, but also reports regularly about the Taiji Man case and the situation in Taiwan. So it is now my pleasure to pass the podium or the virtual podium to Willy Fautré, co-founder and director of Human Rights Without Frontiers, and Willy will introduce the second video and then the testimonies of the DITS.
Thank you very much for this nice introduction. Before starting listening to this is always a very important part of our webinars, a video has been programmed called Court of Heaven. So we will watch it and then we will start with the testimonies.
Today I'm going to tell a story about a lobster, a crab, and a dinosaur. We have all heard about Judgment Day, but how many of us really believe in it? One day, 3 criminals were brought to trial in the court of heaven. They used to be judges. The first criminal was turned into a lobster because he played dumb and made a ruling in violation evidence. The second one was turned into a crab due to his overbearing manners. The third one was turned into a dinosaur for his cruel treatment of civilians. Not knowing what they were facing, they continued to behave in their own ways.
From the way a crab walks, it symbolizes someone who has overbearing manners and thinks he or she is more powerful and important than the surrounding people. A dinosaur symbolizes someone who is cutthroat and aggressive. The Chinese pronunciation of lobster symbolizes someone is deaf and blind to their surroundings.
Where am I? Hey, why are you here too? What? Am I crab now? This is a court of heaven. You have committed serious crimes, that's why you were here. Only those who truly repent will be forgiven. Huh, what nonsense are you little kids talking about? The outcomes of the trials were met with public approval. You knew the evidence favors the defendant, but you made your rulings by twisting the facts. That is false judgment. Oh, that piece of evidence. I saw it. I'm getting older and my ability to retain fact is not as good as it used to be. You are a judge. Have you ever thought about the consequence of a wrongful ruling or its catastrophic impact on someone? How could you be so careless? You are a pest to the society. Was it really that bad? I was only speaking my mind, and so what if I played dumb? You couldn't do anything to me. My actions are protected by the laws, so what crime have I committed? I am wasting my breath explaining this to you. Kids like you won't understand. In the same case, since you made an unfavorable judgment in the first trial, why didn't you recuse yourself in the second trial? Why would I? Why would I want someone to prove me wrong and overturn my previous ruling? I'm not stupid. Admitting your fault is not shameful. Honesty is the best policy. Why would you want to continue doing wrong? My job has a security of a tenure, and you can't ask me to resign. Therefore, I can do as I wish with the people. For tax cases in your court, the people lost 100% of the time. Are you teaming up with the NTB to bully the people? You can't know nothing. The judge has a right to free evaluation of evidence. I have the power to decide who wins or loses. There's nothing you can do. You became a crab because of misconduct and bullying. So what? It is a fact that crabs walk sideways. What can you kids do to us? Get out of his sight now. Are there any adults in the room? Go get your parents and meet us.
Continues to sin. Don't you believe that you will come to this someday? I know! Same mistakes again! Oh my goodness! I'm so scared! I'm wrong! He's going to make the same mistakes! Jesus! Foolish people, why do you always repent when it's too late? Now, listen to the final judgment.
You conspired with the NTB officials. You did not make an unbiased judgment based on the evidence. Guilty. You violated justice and fairness. You took away the people's future. Guilty. You were depraved and damaged the spirit of democracy. You ruined the country and made the people's life miserable. Guilty. What should we do now? If only I had known, I wouldn't have done it in the first place. God, please grant me another chance! Please help me! If you could be more considerate and stop harming others in the future. If you could pursue the truth and stop twisting the facts. If you could follow your conscience, do the right things from now on. Then you might have a chance to make up for your mistakes.
Alas, these adults are pretty strange. They could be good, but why did they choose evil? Now they are facing the consequences of their wrongdoing. God knows everything you do, so whether you are an adult or a child, you must be good.
Yeah, it seems the video is finished. Very refreshing as usual when young people, children are part of it. It gives another perspective to the issue that is a serious one, unfortunately. And so now I will introduce the second session. About the World Press Freedom Day, which is an important date, as media freedom is one of the main pillars of democracy, the rule of law and human rights. And that's why journalists need to be protected in their activities meant to inform public opinion and political decision makers. Media can be friends when they abide by professional ethical norms, but they can also be enemies when they serve a vested interests. It happens that derogatory terms qualifying non-mainline groups are repeatedly used without restraint by some media and former disgruntled members of religious or belief groups to destroy the latter's image out of revenge. The misuse and the trivialization of a derogatory label has recently led to acts of violence against community buildings of Jehovah's Witnesses in Italy and in Germany, while several believers were even killed in a bomb attempt. In Japan last year, Prime Minister Abe Shinzo was assassinated because of alleged links with the Church of Unification, which for years had been vilified and pilloried by the media and former disgruntled members. In Pakistan, Ahmadis are targeted as heretics, repeatedly attacked and killed. In other Muslim countries, the label infidel is sufficient to put the life of a non-Muslim or a Muslim convert at risk. The repeated use of derogatory terms to qualify some minorities and their members, and the otherness of some human groups can be lethal, and the media community has its share of responsibility in this matter. Last but not least, the media stigmatizing minorities do not only influence public opinion, but they also shape the ideas of political decision makers, including in our European democracies. And this can lead to the adoption of new repressive laws targeting minority groups based on fake news, false narratives, and unfounded accusations. And we have lots of examples every day coming to our human rights organizations and also to Bitter Winter, to FoRB in Austria, etc. So using the media is therefore a dangerous exercise that needs professional training, like the miners of landmines and sea mines. And now I will introduce the first Dizzy, Elena Ma, a senior journalist. And that's also interesting to have her perspective based on her experience about what should be good journalism. The floor is yours, Elena. Elena, when you are ready or when the technicians are ready, we'll be pleased to hear you.
Hello everyone, I am Elena. I started working on documentary filmmaking when I was 22 years old. I worked as a reporter in the news department of the public television station and later worked as a reporter for Taiwan News, an English-language newspaper. I have also written 2 books, one about Taiwan's traditional culture and the other about Taiwan's natural ecology. I have a deep love for nature and for the land I grew up in, Taiwan. Because media work requires a lot of physical and mental strength, I began practicing Tai Chi Men Qigong when I was 26 years old, hoping to improve my physical health and wisdom in order to better engage in the work I love. I was shocked to witness the Tai Chi Men case at the age of 28. I saw how prosecutor Ho Quan Jen used the media to fabricate false news and slander Tai Chi Men. I vividly remember the evening of December 19, 1996, when the prosecutor led a large number of armed police to search the Taiji Mendon Academy, where I practiced. He even brought reporters from China Television Company to film the scene. They made an exclusive report that was broadcast the next day, December 20th, claiming that Taiji men had committed fraud worth 3.1 billion Taiwan dollars. I was shocked that Prosecutor Ho violated the principle of confidentiality of investigation and made a show of the search. It was impossible for the news to have been analyzed and sorted before the newspaper deadline that night, yet the next morning's newspaper already had the figure of 3.1 billion Taiwan dollars. Based on my experience, this was a pre-written script that the prosecutor used to judge before trial and smear Taiji men's image through the media, like shooting an arrow first and then drawing a bullseye around it. Taiwan has experienced a period of authoritarian rule in the past. According to the Act on the Recovery of the Human Rights of Victims of the Period of National Authoritarian Rule announced in 2022, the authoritarian rule period refers to the period from 1945 to 1992. During the White Terror period, martial law was imposed in Taiwan, and the authorities used espionage and military authoritarian means to arbitrarily arrest, kill, torture, beat, and confiscate property throughout the country. This resulted in a large number of wrongful, false and fabricated cases in which innocent people were killed, imprisoned or suffered serious damage to their lives and property. However, as we all know, just as the sky does not immediately go from night to day when crossing the international date line, the legacy of authoritarianism and its persecution methods have been deeply engraved in the judicial, tax and security systems. After 1992, human rights violations cases in the post-authoritarian period also need to be redressed. In early April, I and 12 international human rights scholars from 8 countries visited the White Terror Jingmei Memorial Park of the National Human Rights Museum. Mr. Chen Qin-sheng, a victim of the White Terror, personally explained and guided us through the park. The techniques of authoritarian persecution that Mr. Chen Qin-sheng was subjected to were identical to those used by prosecutor Ho Quan-jen, such as forcing confessions through detention, coercive interrogation, shooting the arrow first and painting the target later, and false records. The inhumane treatment that Master and his wife suffered in detention, Sister Peng Li-wan, who was only in her infancy when she was unjustly arrested and detained, and senior brother Chen Diao-sin, who was also imprisoned for accompanying Master and was threatened by Ho Quan-jen with the safety of his wife and daughter to write a false confession, refusing to cooperate with Ho Quan-jen's perjury and was continuously detained. The persecution techniques suffered by Taiji men Shifu and Dizi were exactly the same as those used during the authoritarian era. After 10 years and 7 months, the Taiji men was finally declared innocent and without tax arrears after the third trial, and the Taiji men Shifu and Dizi also received compensation for their wrongful imprisonment by the country. The Taiji men case was also listed by the Control Yuan as a major case for the protection of national human rights. Unexpectedly, due to the incentive of bonuses, the authoritarian regime has been using tax as a means to continuously persecute people. Eventually, the people's assets are seized through administrative seizures and auctions. This series of authoritarian tactics, like ghosts, still exist within Taiwan's legal and taxation system. On August 1, 2020, the National Human Rights Commission of the Control Yuan was established, but authoritarian persecution did not disappear. On August 21 of the same year, the Ministry of Justice's Administrative Enforcement Agency forcibly auctioned off the land for Taiji Men's Self-Cultivation Center in Miaoli, illegally claiming it for the government. On September 19, an innocent volunteer named Mrs. Huang, who was in her 60s, was peacefully holding a sign on the side of the road and was on her way home. Without consent, the police searched other volunteers' bags, found her sign, and claimed she was a current offender without informing her of the crime. They forcibly took her to the police station and detained her for 6 hours. During this time, the appellant was subjected to police intimidation, threats, and abuse, causing her to feel fearful and mentally strained. Finally, she was taken to the Hsinchu District Prosecutor's office almost at midnight and was later placed under house arrest. Due to physical exhaustion, she was sent to the emergency room in the early hours of the morning, and the doctor diagnosed her with acute stress syndrome. All this happened just because she asked a rhetorical question about how much bonus the administrative enforcement officer received. As a journalist, I witnessed all of this while standing next to Mrs. Huang. Mrs. Huang was restricted from leaving her residence for a total of 170 days. In addition, the chief of Jubei Police Station, Xie Boxian, did not uphold administrative neutrality. On the day after her arrest, he appeared in police uniform with the emblem of the Hsinchu County Police Department in the background and held a press conference and issued a false press release as a spokesperson. He claimed that Mrs. Huang went to someone's home, trespassed on private property, endangered personal safety, and would be despised by the people, causing serious damage to her reputation and subjecting her to scrutiny. This abuse of power by public authority to arrest, the attempt to create a chilling effect by arresting one to warn 100, and the use of media to discredit her, is reminiscent of the Tai Ji-men case, which was masterminded by prosecutor Ho Quan-jen 27 years ago. Although the prosecutor later conducted a detailed investigation and determined that Mrs. Huang was only exercising her right to freedom of speech and did not engage in any wrongdoing, she was already traumatized and became a victim of authoritarian persecution once again. Where there is authoritarianism, there are no human rights. Tai Ji-men 1219 case is a case of human rights persecution in the post-authoritarian period. It is like a litmus test that reflects both human nature and conscience. The day when Tai Ji-men is truly exonerated will be the day when Taiwan truly steps out of authoritarianism and becomes a country with democracy, freedom, human rights, and the rule of law. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, and thank you, Elena. As a senior, multi-talented professional journalist, your perception of the way the Tai Ji-men case was fabricated by prosecutor Hu, along with the media, is interesting. For how you detailed it, it was this way. For the raid of December 96, prosecutor Hu brought reporters from China TV company to film the scene. And we have seen that in many other groups, many other groups, also in Argentina, with a yoga group. And they made, in your case, an exclusive report that was broadcast the next day, the 20th of December, claiming that Tai Ji-men had committed fraud worth 3.1 billion Taiwanese dollars. It means, you said, that prosecutor Hu violated the principle of confidentiality of investigation and made a show of the search. It was impossible for the news to have been analyzed and sorted before the newspaper deadline that night. Yet the next morning's newspaper already had the figure of $3.1 billion. Based on your media experience, you said this was a pre-written script that the prosecutor used to judge before trial and wanted to destroy the image of a Tai Ji-men. This is what we now call fabricated case, and it was beautifully described by you. And now I will ask Alan Yen, a patent engineer, to take the floor.
Hello, everyone. I'm Alan Ye, a patent engineer. I'm very happy to meet you through this online formula today. My job is to help my clients to obtain the potential for their intellectual property rights. Over the years, I have been committed to protection the result of the creator's wisdom and the right of freedoms of expressions. I hope to encourage the creators to be creative and promote the dissemination and the development of our culture. The theme of these years, World Press Freedom Days, is shaping a future of rights, freedom of expression as a driver for all the other human rights. On August 21st last year, I participated in the WPN People's Public Trial Program with the theme, The Darkest Day in Taiwanese Human Rights History, Graphist Official Civilizaed Properties. This day will also be the second analysis of the scheduled auctions of Tai Ji-men's lands intents of the Self-Conservation Center. The program invited the lawyer John from Chenyu Law Firm to discuss the abuse process of Taijimen's being illegally executed. Lawyer John pointed that the government has repeatedly used the media to smear Taijimen and illegally seize Taijimen's lands for state ownerships. For example, on January 18, 2020, so the headline post-election statement, Ministry of Justice issues final ultimatum to settle the NAS magazine. It published the information about Taijimen owning the multiple dojos in prime locations, trying to create the illusion that Taijimen has abused the asset but events taxes, smear Taijimen's shifu and deeds. In 2020s, when administrative enforcement agency planned to auction off Taijimen's practice dojo site, the June 28 reporter Lin Yiming issued for 4 special reports directly, meaning that the Taijimen of Miaoli area land has 3 dojo approximate market values and exclusion nominal amount. Through the situation headlines, this is published in the electronic media such as China Times Electric News. Consequently, on the day after the report, Administrative Enforcement Agency Hsinchu branch issued the first auction announcement and republished in the article in the City One magazine on July 1st. The report even cited the desperation of raising a government guardians out of not from the indictment that has been abolished by the court, causing the negative impression of Taijimen shifu and deeds among the world and seriously damaged the reputation of tens of thousands of Taijimen's family. On July 8th, when Chen Yingjing, the Deputy Director of Administrative Enforcement Agency, was interviewed by the PTS reporter Lin Jianxun, he cited the wrong number, a case number that have not even exist, causing a general public to mistaken believing that the fat Taijimen list own taxes financed its first auction on the July 31st. However, after the second bid failed on August 21st, the enforcement agency illegally allowed the National Tax Bureau to bear Taijimen's lands intent for their self-conservation center and issued a land right transfer to NTB on September 7th without allowing the parties to state their own opinions. Those illegal acts has caused many experts and scholars to jump out of criticize on the enforcement agency. However, on September 5th, 2020, Chen Yingjing, representative for the Administrative Enforcement Agency, in the interview with Eastern Broadcast Action Court, understood that the emergency agency is only an enforcement agency that has no power. It means that Taijimen should be held account over the NTB. The administrative enforcement is powerless. However, according to the Article 9, Paragraph 3 of the Administrative Enforcement Law, in the enforcement agency, knowing that the execution name is wrong, it should be applied for suspension. However, if the enforcement agency does not apply for suspension of execution and cause damage for people's interest, it should bear national compressions liability. However, through the first media reports misleading the society at large, we can see from Taijimen's human rights persecution case that officials abuse their force power to violate the others, even become accomplices in the persecution religions believing human rights and test human rights. In contrast of this year's theme, freedom of expression as a driver for all the other rights, human rights, is very ignored. As a worker who protects the illegal property rights, I was a responsibility to define freedom of speech. I hope that the journalists in our country will not be biased or cancel facts for conveying truth obviously and impartially to the audience. They must be allowed the popular power to abuse media under the name of press freedom and act as the human rights persecution, so that the villain cannot be speak out and seek for help. Here, I share a quote that I really like and use to encourage myself. It's from American journalist T.D. Ellman. Generally, journalism is journalism that not only get the facts right, this get the means of events right. This completely not only today, but stands the test of time. This is valid not only by reliable sources, but the unfolding of the story. I believe in that. The journalist in our country is not only convey information, but also have the power to monitor the government. They must be adhere the truth and impartial. I hope that can stick their conscience, continue to speak out and contribute to our country. Just like this thing, freedom of expression as driver for all the other human rights. We must work hard to promote human rights by gathering everyone's attention and forming a force of public opinion. We can urge the government to implement tax reform and practice social justice through fair and objective news reporting. This is my sharing. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you very much for your well-researched and documented paper, Alan. As protecting the intellectual rights of private persons and companies, your analysis of the treatment of the Taiwanese is very interesting. Some meet people and out in the campaign, they gave a picture of Taiwan that was based on facts. In reality, they just wanted to have a good sale of their news, even distorted, even fabricated, even fake news. And such a practice is unfortunately not new in many democracies in Europe. Now I will give the floor to Judy Lowe, Product Manager. Mrs. Judy Lowe, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Willie, for having me here. Hello, everyone. My name is Judy Lowe, and I'm currently a product manager for a technology company. My educational background includes a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's degree in organizational psychiatry and psychology from King's College London. Today, I would like to discuss the benefit of press freedom from a psychological perspective and how we should properly utilize this constitutionally guaranteed freedom to bring well-being to ourselves and others. Press freedom is essential in a democratic country, as it allows for the monitoring of power. It provides the general public with more comprehensive information, enabling better decision-making in political matters and ensuring a healthier functioning of democratic politics. It has also allowed people the right to pursue truth. Although there are true and false news stories, Once we know that the press is not free, it inhibits our ability to judge truth based on personal experience and erodes our trust in news. Finally, under the protection of press freedom, people can achieve their self-worth, fostering creative thinking and independent thought. What I find fascinating from the psychological perspective is that many psychological manipulate hidden within the news. For example, the concept of conformity in social psychology is also employed. News reports about a supermarket X being sold out can lead to more supermarkets experiencing the same phenomenon the next day. Do people who rush to buy really need those eggs? Perhaps not. They are just influenced by conformity and follow the crowd in stockpiling. This kind of example is abundant and further convinces us that news has a profound impact on people's mental health. The importance of mental health is highlighted by recent research published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology by the American Psychological Associations. The study found that daily exposure to political news creates stress that negatively affect people's mental health and well-being. The researchers repeatedly tested this finding over 3 weeks with 811 participants, including members of major political parties and individuals with no party affiliation. In the second experiment, participants were asked to watch political news segments from the highest rated liberal and conservative news programs. The researchers found that participants who watch political news experience more negative emotions than those who watch neutral, non-political news. Press freedom carries significant responsibility for information provision in a democratic society. However, since the rise of yellow journalists in the late 19th century, the pursuit of commercial interests has led to sensationalized reporting, undermining the news industry's educational, supervisory, and decision-making functions. In 1947, the U.S. Commission of Freedom of the Press proposed the social responsibility theory, which advocates that news communication should be free while maintaining the public right to know. When conflict arises between individual privacy and national security, wise distinction and choices should be made between the right to know and social responsibilities. As news media expand into massive organizations, they should also consider journalistic ethics, striving for objectivity and neutrality in reporting and complementing what news the public needs and what news will have long-lasting negative impact on society. My childhood was scarred by the abuse of freedom of the press by the judicial system and media personnel. Our entire family started practicing Qigong with our Shifu in Taijimen when I was 8 months old. However, leading to the healthy and happy lifestyle. However, when I was 5 years old in 1996, I was shocked by the news report I watched with my babysitter. Since she knew my family had practiced Qigong in Taijimen, she turned to me with an unforgettable expression, as if I were a monster, and said, "You guys in Taijimen are raising goblins?" The news was reporting the baseless allegation made by prosecutor Ho Kuan-ren, who leaked uninvestigated investigation content to the media during the 4-month investigations period, leading to more than 400 sensational and untrue reports in top television stations for more than 70 times, creating a one-sided public opinion that Taijimen was an evil religious group. At just 5 years old, I was persecuted even by my babysitter who had taken care of me for 5 years. And stranger on the street saw me and my parents in our Taijimen uniform as little goblins. My case is just one of many that have been shattered by false reporting. Senior media professional Fang Lida commented on the Taijimen cases after nearly 11 years of investigation by prosecutor and courts. Taijimen was found not guilty, and the defendants were granted compensation for being wrongly imprisoned. However, the news reported barely anything about this, unlike the massive coverage during the investigation. Another media professional, Lin Chaoxing, couldn't bear it and pointed out that media reported relentlessly during the incidents. But when Taijimen was found not guilty, the media barely reported anything. The prosecutor felt that the verdict was not his responsibility. The media thought there was no news angle, and the newspaper only wrote a little bit. In reality, there was no justice for the victims. We need to protect media freedom while also considering legality, due process, and human rights. Reporting more positive news, such as recent International Conscience Day series in Taiwan Xinsheng Daily News, can inspire people to do good and help the news industry prosper in the digital age by moving toward more just and objective reporting, equal human rights, and media safety. Finally, I urge everyone in democratic country to cherish the freedom provided by the Constitution. Whether you are a journalist or anyone expressing opinions, you should always be guided by your conscience and express true, good, and positive content to the world. As a broad audience, it is also part of our responsibility to uphold social justice and not be influenced by the conformity. We can all use our voice to defend human rights and practice social justice, which is how we can truly demonstrate the benefit of press freedom. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dilo. Thank you. Press freedom, you said, carries significant responsibility for information provision based on the conscience. But unfortunately, with the troll farms, the news becoming viral on social media and news spread by people having vested interests, the red lines between information and propaganda are getting more and more blurred. Lie, lie, there will always be something left, a statement inspired by a similar sentence written by Voltaire. And in the case of Taijimen, lies were spread according to the statistics that you mentioned. They were spread in 400 sensational and untrue reports in 12 television stations for more than 70 times. As I said earlier in my introduction, media can be our friends, but they can also be our enemies. And so we must be very careful with them. And now I will invite the next speaker, the next DZ, John Luo, an executive director in the textile industry. The floor is yours. Hello.
Hello, dear scholar. Let me introduce myself. My name is John Luo. I have been in the textile industry for more than 30 years. In the past, people in Taiwan believe the textile work on site industry. Is this true? Among the people living wood need food, clothing, housing, transportation, and entertainment. Textile ranks second. How could it be sensory industry? I studied the textile and finishing in Germany 30 years ago. And I knew that the development of textile science R&D has finally turned into spatial material science, which can be used to benefit mankind in many ways, such as sport wear, protection, medical fabric, etc. Currently, I'm working in the Yunnan using the high-tech product technology to achieve energy safe and carbon reduced method and produce function knitting elastic fabric, such as the yoga or the sport fabric. Today, theme is World Press Freedom Day. Many countries do not have the free press. The message was released by national government agency. This is the case in communist country, for example. Much of the information is this non-democratic country is hiding, and all you know, there is already message of the purpose. We all know that only free press can make society more democratic and free. Those, in addition to the three powers of the legislation, administration, and the judiciary, in the fourth power was born. In English, the fourth power refers to the media and the publisher hearing. That is to say, the media supervises the behavior of the government with the right of the freedom of the press, thereby forming a certain degree of restraint. Freedom of the press means good things should be praised and the bad thing should be explored, so that the country and the society can continue to develop. Speaking of my major, the textile and the garment industry was always play an important role in the economic development of the Taiwan and the Yunnan. However, issues such as freedom of speech, human rights, and the conscience has always been issues of the common concern to the industry in the fourth country. Taiwan was long been a major player in the global textile and apparel industry. The industry has flourished since the 1960s and has gone through various stages of the transformation to adapt the change in the global marketplace. Taiwan textile garment industry is characterized by the high technology and the innovation drive. However, Taiwan is not without the challenging issue of the labor right and the freedom of pressing have been in the spotlight. Despite the government's effort to protect labor rights and promote free speech, some work face instances in exploitation and harassment. For example, forcing workers to work overtime, thinking that it is reasonable to give the reasonable remuneration, does not know that it's a violation of individual human rights. On the other hand, the Vietnam textile garment industry developed rapidly in recent years, thanks to the low labor cost, abundant raw material, and favorable trade agreement. Vietnam has become one of the world's largest export textile and clothing. However, industry has also been accused of labor right violation and restriction on the free speech. For example, children labor used to pay low wages, and the workers have no channel to complain about the unequal treatment. Despite the difference in the industry profile of the two countries, Taiwan and Vietnam share a common focus on the issue of the labor right, freedom of speech, and the conscience in the respective textile and apparel industry. It is imperative to ensure that these issues are addressed in order to promote a healthy and a sustainable industry. Speaking of the personal life, after returning from Germany, I joined the Taijimen for my health. For more than 30 years, I have the practical qi and nourished my mind here, which has greatly improved my body and mind. Taijimen Qigong Academy is a group of Qigong and my school, Dr. Hong Daozi, the head of the Taijimen, had led his disciple to travel to more than 100 countries at his own expense in the past 20 years, spread great love, peace, and harmony. The message of the conscious on the January 1st, 2040, the February of the World Peace of Life, World Citizen Congress, and the Taijimen Qigong Academy joined landing the conscious era movement, which inspired people in the 200 countries, organizations, communicate, and action. My civil Dr. Hong reminded world leaders to unite for the global good and cooperate on the plan and project that benefit all, wish for the world of peace, free from the violent conflicts, war, poverty, disease, and hunger. However, Taijimen was politically purged by the government in the 1996 and was prosecuted by the prosecutors for fraud and tax evasion. Although it was acquitted by the Superior Court in the third trial 2007, there was no tax erasure and no violation of the tax collection law. However, in August 2020, the National Taxation Bureau did not comply with the court ruling and joined the administrative executive agency to auction of the Holy Land of the Taijimen practice. Under the guise of the national interest, their real purpose is to benefit themselves for the foreigners system. This is a behavior a few governments unite without conscience. Unit without conscience, urging the Taiwan government to find the conscience it deserves, master the courage, face history mistake, and quickly resolve the fact Taijimen case, so as to regain the reputation of the democratic country, lead a fair and transparent tax system, attract foreign investors to invest in Taiwan, so that the beautiful Taiwan can achieve sustainable development. Finally, I would like to thank many scholars and experts for their involvement in the Taijimen human rights prosecution case. They not only write white paper on the Taiwan Taijimen case, just get a project, but also publish many articles Peter Winter magazine discussing Taijimen case in depth. It is the best example of the everyone use their conscience to urging the government to implement freedom of speech, freedom of belief, fairness in law and the text, and the practice social justice. Here we appeal to press freedom and the transparency to shift the sustainable well-being of the everyone has a conscience. The world is peaceful. Everyone is happy and every family is happy. Thank you.
Thank you, John Luo. Yeah, many countries don't have a free press, you said, rightly so, especially in totalitarian communist countries. And much of the information in those non-democratic states is hidden on purpose for political reasons. However, while free press can make a society more democratic and more free, it can betray the truth for financial reasons. And it is expected that the media, also called false power, after the legislative, executive, judiciary, etc., supervises the behavior of the government to incite politicians to follow their conscience and avoid corruption. You have the control you want in Taiwan to do that, but in many democratic countries that does not exist, that sort of institution. So freedom of the press means that good things should be praised and bad things should be exposed. But journalists must also follow their conscience, do that, and refuse to be manipulated by people and institutions with vested interests. Thank you for focusing on these points that I found quite relevant. And now I will ask the last speaker, Bobby Chen, an artist living in Canada, to take the floor. Bobby Chen.
Hello?
Yes.
Hi. Greetings. Greetings to our dear friends who have been tirelessly advocating for human rights issues. Massimo, Willie, Marco, and all dear global citizens who have gathered also today here. It's great to see you guys. My name is Bobby Chen, and I am a story artist based in Canada. I translate details of life into impactful visual stories to spread positive energy. In addition to my artistic pursuits, I am a dedicated human rights and peace activist and a lifetime volunteer of various human rights and peace movement related NGOs from Taiwan, Canada, and the US. And all this inspired by my shifu, Dr. Hong Daozi. In discussing world press freedom, I believe it is essential to recognize that each of us plays a role in this big process. A free and independent media is not only a checkpoint for democracy, but also a driving force behind an informed and engaged citizenry. In today's rapidly changing and interconnected world, where fake news and disinformation are becoming increasingly prevalent, press freedom is essential. It ensures accountability and transparency, fostering trust in institutions, and also promoting good governance. A free media provides accurate, diverse information for informed decision-making, cultivating civic participation and better policy making. Press freedom also facilitates debate, promoting tolerance, understanding, and diverse viewpoints, while preventing citizens from being misled by those in power. Living in Canada, I have witnessed an inspiring example of a free press in action. The Canadian media landscape is marked by a strong commitment to independent journalism, fueled by the foundational principles enshrined in the country's Charter of Rights and Freedoms. For example, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, CBC, by operating independently from the government, CBC ensures that Canadians have access to accurate, reliable, and diverse information, fostering an informed and engaged citizenry. This dedication to press freedom has allowed the media to hold the powerful accountable and give voice to the voiceless. Coming back to Taiwan, in recent years of efforts to understand and advocate for text transparency and human rights, I realized devastating underlying problems in this democratic country. Although Taiwan has made significant strides in promoting press freedom since the end of martial law in 1987, the news media still faces the challenge of manipulation by politics and few government officials that hold immense power over the people. And I've been a witness to Taiwan's misleading news broadcasts, such as the Taijimen case, where the former head of the Investigation Bureau of the Ministry of Justice, Ho Kuan-ren, attempted to defame and suppress Taijimen. He utilized the news media, to broadcast and fabricate evidence. He caused panic and confusion among the public, manipulating public opinion. Additionally, there was also the case of Mr. Chen Qin-Xu, where the Administrative Enforcement Agency fabricated evidence to fight against Mr. Chen and made one of the news media in Taiwan, Formosa News, to publish unreal claims against Mr. Chen's case, undermining Taiwan's commitment to democracy and human rights. When media outlets are co-opted by political or corrupted interests, they risk jeopardizing the public's trust and compromising the democratic principles they are meant to uphold. As a global citizen, it is our responsibility to stay informed, gather information from diverse perspectives, and not be ignorant. We must approach each subject with an open mind, refraining from judgment until we have gained sufficient knowledge and understanding. Let us remember that the root of many global issues lies in the decision and choices of people, driven by their conscience. Greed and selfishness often fuels these problems. It does not matter which political party in Taiwan it's governing. The important thing is to treat taxpayers with real care. Knowing that there are so many helpless victims who have already ended their own lives from the crushing weight of abuse and power, I often tell myself, we cannot stop right here. We cannot stop, knowing that our voice sends a helping hand to the helpless. Knowing our every word gives hope to the ones lost and shattered. And knowing that if we don't continue trying, we will lose the friends we could have saved along the way. Lastly, we cannot possibly achieve this monumental task alone. So thank you again to our dear friends, Massimo, Willie, Marco, and all the dedicated professionals who have been actively advocating for human rights issues on a global level. We love you and thank you so much.
Thank you, Bobby Chen. Well, living in Canada, you can observe what a free and responsible press really is, as this country is in the top category of the World Press Freedom Rankings. The Canadian media landscape is marked by a strong commitment to independent journalism, fueled by foundational principles enshrined in the country's Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And thanks to the Charter, the Canadians have access to accurate, reliable, diverse information, fostering an informed and engaged citizenry, but also working for social justice. And Taiwan has made significant strides in promoting press freedom since the end of the martial law. you said, but the media, the news media still faces the challenge of manipulation by politics, as in many other countries, by the way. And a few government officials who have utilized the press to broadcast fabricated evidence against Taijimen, unfortunately. When media outlets are co-opted by political or corrupted interests, they risk jeopardizing the public's trust and compromising the democratic principles they are meant to uphold. Let's hope that Taiwan, as many other countries, try to continue to make progress in this regard. Thank you very much. And you are the last speaker. So I will now give the floor to Marco, who will make the conclusions after probably a video that will be shown in the meantime. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought probably I didn't understand. I thought that we had a video before my conclusion. So my fault. I'm sorry, and I do apologize. But I do thank all of you wholeheartedly, because we had a very important webinar today in terms of quality and variety of subjects. This is very important after the recent World Press Freedom Day that it was just celebrated, and we are remembering today. We started with a great introduction by my friend and colleague, Professor Massimo Entrovigne, remembering us of Maximilian Kolbe, who is, by the way, for Catholics, is regarded as a saint, a canonized saint. And specifically for his strong message, Massimo quoted from his last article on December 1940 that truth is simply truth, and no one can change it ever. I mean, we cannot comment on this basic statement. It's so powerful when we could inscribe it in our heart and mind, and always use it, whatever religious persuasion, cultural persuasion, political persuasion. It's so important, and it should be the lighthouse of every step we move every single day. Then Peter Zorer, my colleague as a journalist, touched a very important point, and I do thank him for his very original and important contribution today on how and why journalists and faith communities need each other. It is not common to hear these calls from the side of journalists, but also sometimes from the side of faith communities that have good reason to regard journalists suspiciously, but sometimes they may find friends. And again, what Peter said in underlining how and why journalists and faith community really need each other, because their angles and their fields support each other, is very much important. Stefania Ceruti say, and I quote, "Fake news accusing religious or spiritual movements of strange behavior make for better copy and gather more readers than real news." I work as a journalist, and I struggle every time I try to submit a good piece of news, and trying to publish a story, and I need to fight hard against this mentality, which is of course ruining the profession, but above that is a bad sign of a bad way of how human beings, whatever their field is, should behave. And Billy Fautré introduced Dizzy, and he was so good in suing all the speeches by Dizzy today and underlining what they encapsulated in their in their speeches. I just want very briefly to mention Elena Ma, when she said, and I quote, "Where there is authoritarianism, there are no human rights. Taizhimen case is a case of human rights persecution in the post-authoritarian period." It's so important what she said, because we realize oftentimes, maybe every day, that even in non-authoritarian or post-authoritarian countries, there are niches of authoritarianism that need to be fought hard and repealed. Then Alan Ye, and I quote again, said, "As a worker who protects intellectual property rights, I have a responsibility to defend freedom of speech. I hope that journalists is out in our country, and it means Taiwan, of course, will not be biased or conceal facts and convey truth objectively and impartially to audience." Thank you, Alan Ye. This is a reminder for me, working not in Taiwan, but as a journalist. And I do thank you for saying this word. And then Judy Lowe, quote again, "Press freedom is essential in a democratic country as it allows for the monitoring of power. It provides the general public with more comprehensive information, enabling better decision-making in political matters and ensuring a healthier functioning of democratic politics. It also allows people the right to pursue truth." The right to pursue truth is a topic I often address in webinars on Taizhimen and others. And what she said is more or less the topic of a few speeches I recently gave on the responsibility of the press and journalists in Istanbul, Brussels, and Washington, D.C. So I really thank Judy Lowe for these important words. Then Bobby Chen said, "When media outlets are co-opted by political or corrupted interests, they risk jeopardizing the public's trust and compromising the democratic principles they are meant to uphold." This quote is very important. Willy Fautré just quoted it, but I really wanted to repeat because it's one of the key elements of the whole story. And you just saw that I twisted the order of Dizzy, and I inverted the last two on purpose, because I really want to conclude this introductory part of my conclusion using two precise and strong words used by John Luo, so that they may remain in the heart and mind of everyone: commitment and action. He learned that from Taizhimen and FoPol, but that is more or less what we need to do in life every day, all of us, again, whatever is our persuasion. I thank you, all of you, and I just want to add a few comments as a conclusion of my own. And many times I use pop culture and movies to address serious topic, because I understand that, or we understand, we realize that pop culture may have very important aspects. And I really want to address my topic today, my conclusion, focusing on a Hollywood movie. The Book of Eli is a 2010 American film directed by Albert and Alan Hughes, professionally known as the Hughes brothers. In a post-apocalyptic scenario and with an artistic taste that some may define neo-Western, or perhaps neo-spaghetti Western for its atmosphere and location, a solitary man by the name of Eli, played by talented American actor Denzel Washington, undertakes a long and perilous journey among ruins, desperados, and what remains of a wretched humanity. His purpose is to bring the last existing copy of the King James Bible to a safe harbor in San Francisco, a surviving bastion of civilization. Carnegie, played by likewise talented American actor Gary Oldman, is a warlord, totally corrupted by his appetite for power in a Mad Max-like frenzy. He yearns for the Bible that Eli protects by his sword and would do anything to steal it from his hand. In the most revealing passage of the movie, Carnegie explains why, I quote, "It's not a book,
It's a weapon, he shouts. A weapon aimed right at the hearts and minds of the weak and the desperate. It will give us control of them. If we want to rule more than one small town, we have to have it. People will come from all over. They will do exactly what I tell them if the words are from the book. It's happened before, and it will happen again. And all we need is that book. End of quote. Carnegie in the movie speaks the truth, not a cinematic truth only, functional to the movie plot, but a real truth for the real world we all live in. Of course, he speaks the truth interspersed with lies, as all ideologues and ideocrats always do, and bending it to his own will to power. But the meaning is clear. He wants the Bible because the Bible convinces people and moves them to act. Carnegie is a well-read man. He has consulted and studied plenty of books, yet he has failed to find the ultimate one. When he first meets Ellie, ardently desiring his Bible, Carnegie is reading a book about the Italian fascist dictator Benito Mussolini, famous for the mobilizing power of his speeches. Yet not even a demagogue who was able to drag an entire nation into daring adventures, a doomed and a bloody war included, was enough for this petty tyrant who dreamt to rule the world. Carnegie doesn't need a technique or mere erudition. Carnegie needs truth. He is a believer, not a devout Christian as Ellie, but a believer in the unparalleled power that words of truth have over the human condition. The core theme of the film is, in fact, truth, not the Bible. And this is why it is a secular action movie and a Christian movie that is unaware of being Christian, even distinctively Catholic. Our important series of webinars on the Taijimen case addressed the question of the media several times and from a number of different interesting angles. Through this seemingly distressing story on a Hollywood movie, I would like to introduce yet another angle. The media questions revolves entirely around words. As the movie teaches, words may have the power to convince and move if they are rich and meaningful, or the power to disappoint and let people down if they are poor and prosaic. Media use words to challenge power or to promote alternative powers, becoming either servants of the power or watchdogs of the power or another power themselves. All depends on the words that media choose to use, either the words of truth or the words of the yes men and the servants of the powers that be. In the Taijimen case, it is all too evident that both the political power and the media are or may become either co-actors of the solution or accomplices in the persecution. Taijimen is not guilty of anything. We all know it. Both media and politicians in Taiwan know it, for the simple reason that all levels of the Taiwanese justice system have declared it several times. The solution of the Taijimen case must then come from the political power through a political decision and also produce changes in the laws of the country. We all also know this. Media know it too. The proper role of the media in this and similar cases should then be to constantly remember a known truth to the political power and to the general public. Media should tell the truth, repeat it, insist, challenge, face, and confront. And media should do it by using the right words and crafting the right sentences. If media surrender to the position of those in power and do not give power to truth through appropriate words, then the Taijimen case is lost. If media choose the path of political correctness or compromise, then the Taijimen case is lost. If media concede to the platitudes of the day, then the Tajuman case is lost. If they indulge on the discredited word cult, if they buy the fake argument of tax evasion that corrupt bureaucrats continue to agitate, if they don't look at the monsters of religious persecution in their eyes, then the Tajuman case is lost. It is lost even if some media try to find a compromise and surrender a part of the truth in the hope of finding pragmatic solution based on half-lies. These are never really found. I dare suspect, I love British or English understatement, I dare suspect that the Tajman case has been going on for almost 20 years, also because media didn't fully perform their duty. If media are really the watchdog of power, especially in a democratic society as Taiwan is, the powers that be could feel their pressure. In the movie I started with, and I'm concluding my conclusion, Elif finally reveals that he is blind. For his whole life, he memorized his Bible written with the Braille system. When the physical book of the Bible ends up being destroyed, Eli dictates it from his memory to a scribe. No one else could read that Bible, and this is the ultimate defeat of Carnegie, the villain of the movie. Proof is not limited to its material vessels. Media had the power to mobilize for freedom of religion, belief, and creed of Tajuman and all other persecuted groups because they are guardians of words, and words may contain truth. Media only need to start believing it in Taiwan and all over the world. And again, I do thank you so much, all of you, for this important webinar on our special day celebrating the freedom of media and the role of media in trying to help solving important questions and cases. And I ask you to stay with us just for a few minutes more for our real concluding video. Thank you.